Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Lisa. You previously reviewed Body Burns Away by Songs Ohio. This is from Jason's solo album, from the perspective of a person who's made peace with the fact that he is beyond saving, asking loved ones to wait behind while he travels the path towards his death. He would lose his battle with alcoholism a few years later. A devastating song from the master of sad songs. So that's what we're going to be checking out today. The song is called Let Me Go, Let Me Go, Let Me Go by Jason Molina. Let's see what we're getting into today. Yeah, right from the start, we already have a rather somber beginning. It's cheery, slightly abrasive with that guitar tone. Especially the volume discrepancy between the two instruments and the drum being so quiet in the back.
Wait behind, wait behind, wait behind. Shadows still with us, the tides are with us, silent sorrow with us. As long as there's no forgiveness.
It's interesting that there's a strong element of production as far as crafting all of these tones, but there's basically no mixing going on at all. Almost as if there was a sound engineer but not a sound mixer.
Places of the dead, and I have to believe everything she said, as long as there's no wait behind. him still close to your ears. If you can still hear. Grave still close to the water, moon still walking the shore, and mule's head still in the sycamore, waiting behind. Let me go, let me go, let me go, so I can wait behind.
I was muted. Okay, what I said was I got a pretty strong grasp on this. We're going to go over a bunch of positive stuff, a couple of subjectively negative things, and then we're going to hit lyrics. So this is a rather simple track here. We have the chords off of some sort of keyboard, piano, synthesizer over here. The chords are rather somber and light, but there is an uptick to it. It isn't completely negative. I think part of this comes from the timbre of it. It is bright and kind of chirpy, but also there's parts of the chord progression that feel positive. And based off of the description that the requester gave me, I'm going to assume that this is the acceptance, that the dreariness of the song is the overall negative relationship to everything about someone who has accepted their death. And that's usually not a great topic for most people, but the acceptance is the positivity. Regardless of the circumstances, there is this positive component to the chord progression, and I think that's what it is alluding to. We have some very, very, very light drumming in the back. It is basically just snare, kick, and hi-hat. It's also a bit compressed. It's quiet in volume, and then it's shoved way in the back of the mix. It feels so far away from me as the listener, and that's... I don't know what to make of that other than almost a sort of sonic deprioritization of it, since it's a glorified metronome at this point. It doesn't do anything of interest. There aren't any cool fills. There's no spectacle to the drumming. It is very functional, keeping the time, and that's about it. We have then this intermittent guitar. super loud, super abrasive, covers up everything else except the hi-hat, and I think that's just because the hi-hat is such a higher frequency sizzle sound that it can cut through the massive fuzziness of the guitar. But otherwise, on a volume level, the hi-hat should be covered up too. And it just dominates the sound so much anytime that it's present. And then we have the vocals. They're fairly loud, but not as big. So while they are quite a bit louder than every other instrument aside from the guitar, they don't dominate the sound the same way the guitar does. And that's it. We get some lead melody riffs from the guitar and the vocals on top of this chord progression and beat. And that's the entirety of the song. What makes it effective then is the way that everything works. The chord progression is dreary with a sense of positivity to it, a little bit of an uptick in sound and timbre. The guitar is the antithesis to that. It isn't light, it isn't softened up, it is loud, it is abrasive, it is in your face, it is gnarly. The distortion and compression are cranked up to the highest, even when he plays consonant harmonies between notes, even just dyads, just two notes at the same time. There's still so much clashing warble to it. The thing with distortion, amplification, overdrive, any of this is that you're basically expanding the wavelength, the volume of these sound waves so much that it's going to amplify anything that comes out of it. And so if there's even the tiniest bit of distortion, maybe one of your strings is just a hair bit out of tune, which is fairly normal. No instrument likes to stay perfectly in tune. It's tough to even make an instrument perfectly in tune. And then there's always variability of it. If it's a wind instrument, you have stuff like the warming up of the instrument or the cooling down of the instrument, or air going through it in the outside temperature modifying. This can make it flatter or sharper. When it comes to strings, there's a tension on the strings. The more that you play it, it's going to loosen the tension up over time. No instrument stays at a tuning, and no one really can tune their instrument perfectly either. So there's always going to be minor amounts of intonation issues that usually the ear can't pick up. But when you're going to run overdrive and just max out the volume and make it so massive like we do here, even little bits of intonation are amplified, and you can hear that warble in the song. Now, this is twofold. One, to me, I hear the dissonance, but also what I hear is pain. I hear that tension. It is a texture, a crunchy texture to the guitar work anytime there's more than one note being played. It feels painful. And on top of that, many of the chords that are being played here stem from the blues scale. It doesn't necessarily go in the dreary direction that we hear the electronic chords over here on the right, but it does play off of them a little bit. And sometimes there's some clashing there too, where I don't think that they're perfectly working well together with note choices, but I think the atmosphere ends up being better for it. We have dreariness with a little bit of acceptance, and then we have pain and wailing coming from the guitar. And the two of those together, I think, works well. It delivers on some high intensity emotions on this song. But then we got to pull in the vocals too. These, I think, are what sell everything. I already think that there's some strong cohesion between many of these sounds and notes being played, but the vocals, he'll start really loud and then bring it down something like this, almost barely audible. You can hear his voice start to crack as he starts pulling away at the air pressure, and it gets to a point where sometimes the vocal cords just don't resonate in a way that creates a tone. You just kind of get some of that fry crackle. You get the airiness of it, and you lose out on the singing for the underlying tones. I find that very human. It introduces something that isn't necessarily technically proficient, but is emotionally resonant. It is one of those areas where I think Jason tends to excel. This is something I've praised about him in the past, even though it isn't something that I think always works for me as far as execution goes. I think the intention is usually pretty solid. Here, though, I think even the execution, it works for me. It feels like someone who is at the end of their energy, someone who recognizes they don't have much more to go and they can feel it in their physical presence, in the way they talk, in the way they sing. It almost feels at times like during the middle of the song, he's begun to give up. And when we pair the soft chords with the angry, aggressive guitars and the basically giving up vocals, it paints a very dismal picture of this. Well, I guess the artist, I don't know enough about, normally I would say the narrator here, the focus of the song. But I suppose it's Jason talking about Jason here. So I guess we'll just go in that direction. And all of this comes together to, like I mentioned, paint a pretty bleak picture of this situation while still trying to have a very realistic picture of the situation. There is a little bit of positivity in the chord progression. It is a sad song overall, especially for people outside of Jason. Maybe even Jason himself feels pretty sad about this, but that level of acceptance comes through it too. It's not overly bleak, it isn't overly dreary or abysmal. There is light here somewhere. And like I said, I have to assume it's the acceptance. And from that perspective, it is a fantastic song. It executes on the vision really well and crafts something that's exceptionally emotionally resonant. But I'm just not keen on all of it. The production is a big stickler for me. More than once, I was pulled out of the experience because of the guitar. Like I mentioned, it definitely captures the feeling of pain really well, of agony. But it requires a certain level of acceptance of what the song is doing, a sort of suspension of disbelief for audio. And more than once, it broke my suspension of disbelief, or whatever the sonic representation of that storytelling phrase would be. And it pulls me, I immediately think, oh, yeah, I'm not listening to this emotionally engaging track. I'm listening to some guy play a guitar. And it pulls me out of that every time. It's just too loud and too abrasive. And I even ended up turning my volume down a little bit because the guitar is just that much too loud for me. Just one instrument just dominates the sound. And I just wasn't a real big fan of that. There was also some intonation stuff that goes on towards the end that I didn't feel was productive to the overall emotional atmosphere. You could probably read something into it alongside him sort of giving up and accepting his fate, that, he doesn't care about being in tune anymore. But this is something that, a criticism that I've thrown at Jason before too, is that sometimes he will sing like an angel, perfectly in tune, and other times he just feels like he's going to sing whatever note he wants, even if it's not in the key, and it doesn't capture me very well. I think there's parts of this song where the rawness absolutely leans into the emotional resonance. I think there's other times where the rawness needed to be reined in a little bit, and cleaned up a little, so that the raw element doesn't take the listener out of the experience. And of course, that's a subjective thing. Some people are going to be along for this entire ride, and they're just going to be completely engaged with it. Others, I think the production is going to be a little bit of a hurdle for them. But overall, as usual, Jason, he's uncompromising, and I have to appreciate that. He has a vision, he executes on it, and it doesn't matter how much of it doesn't work for me. It just means I'm not the target audience of it. And he doesn't care about me being the target audience. He's making art for himself, and if anyone else enjoys it, that seems to be pretty cool. But not something that drives him. He continued to make art for himself. At least that's the image I get of him based on the music I've heard of his. Let me hit some lyrics on this, and then we're going to wrap this one up. I'll be honest, lyrically, this goes a little over my head, and even with a starting point of knowing what the song is generally about, as described by the requester, I still have a hard time figuring out what any of this is supposed to be. The phrase wait behind is mentioned many times. It isn't extrapolated on until the very end of the song when he says, "Let me go so I can wait behind." I don't get it. I'm trying to think of it both in the idea of him still living and wanting to wait behind, or him moving on and passing away and waiting beyond or waiting behind in that realm. I just, none of it's, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I'm being dense right here. This doesn't seem like it should be difficult, but I'm just not grasping it. So the song kicks off with 3 wait behinds. Then he says, shadows are still with us, the tides are still with us, silent sorrow is with us, as long as there's no forgiveness. It says, an owl above places of the dead, and I have to believe everything she said, as long as there's no forgiveness. I'm not following any of this. The idea of as long as there's no forgiveness sounds like it is a requirement of his, that I'm accepting this. I'm accepting my life for what it is, as long as no one tries to forgive me for what I've done. That's how I want to read that line. That we can still have shadows and tides and sorrow as long as no one tries to forgive me. That doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I think it's a decent starting place. The final stanza says, hymns still close to your ears that you can still hear, graves still close to the water, moon still walking the shore, that mule's head still in the sycamore, waiting behind. None of this imagery makes any sense to me in a metaphorical way or a figurative way. Sorry, that's kind of the same thing. Metaphorical or literal. I don't get it. Like I said, even having a jumping off point, I'm still lost. I would be completely flustered if I didn't even know what the song was about, generally speaking. So, if anyone has insight into this, it's not a lot. I think we have a whole 10 lines here, minus the wait behind. Let me know your interpretation. You can find lyrics on genius.com or probably pretty much anywhere. Jason seems to be rather popular, I'm sure, but definitely at genius.com. I'd like someone's insight on this. I'm very lost. These are my thoughts. Jason Molina's Let Me Go, Let Me Go, Let Me Go. What are your thoughts, though? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Are there things that I talked about you want to expand on? Maybe I didn't go far enough in that discussion. Maybe I misspoke about some stuff. Please let me know all of that, alongside any sort of interpretation or opinion you have about this and any other thoughts you have. Put all of that down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell, I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.